At 75 years old, I got a phone call that wiped out my entire life savings. Just like that. Every single penny I had worked for was gone. I lost my home, my security, and the future I thought I had all mapped out. And I'm here to tell you, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I know that sounds unbelievable. If you had told me that 2 years ago, I would have called you crazy. But I'm not speaking to you from a place of bitterness. I'm speaking to you from a place of peace I didn't even know was possible. A peace I had to lose everything to find. Stick with me, and I'll tell you how the worst day of my life put me on a path to a richness I never could have imagined. Before that phone call, my life was, well, it was perfect. Or so I thought. My husband, Robert, and I were married for 52 years before he passed, and we built a beautiful life. We had a 3-bedroom house with a garden I was so proud of. Every spring, my roses were the talk of the neighborhood. Our home was filled with furniture we'd collected over a lifetime, photos of our kids and grandkids on every surface, and memories tucked into every corner. My days had a rhythm. Tuesdays were for the gardening club. Thursdays were for lunch with my friends. Sundays were for big family dinners, where I'd spend the entire day cooking. My finances were in perfect order. Robert had been a meticulous planner, and our savings were supposed to mean I'd never have to worry again. I was secure. I was comfortable. My life was a fortress I'd spent decades building, and I truly thought its walls were impenetrable. I measured my life by what I had: the paid-off mortgage, the healthy retirement fund, the heirlooms I'd one day pass down. I was the matriarch, the one everyone could depend on, solid and unshakable, like the old oak tree in our front yard. My entire identity was wrapped up in that house, in that security, in the role I played. I had no idea my fortress was really just a very comfortable cage. It all started so innocently, a phone call on a Tuesday afternoon. The man on the other end had a kind, professional voice. He said he was from my bank's fraud department, that there had been some suspicious activity on my account, and they needed to act fast to protect my money. He used all the right words. He sounded so legitimate, so genuinely concerned. He knew things, you see. The name of my bank, my recent transactions. He told me that sophisticated criminals were trying to drain my retirement account, and that to protect it, I needed to move my money to a new, secure account the bank had set up. The urgency in his voice was contagious. It felt like we were a team, working together against some invisible enemy. He kept saying we had to act now, before the hackers took it all. For 2 hours, he walked me through it, step by step. He was so patient, so reassuring. Whenever I felt a flicker of doubt, he'd say, "Ma'am, I know this is stressful, but my only job is to protect your assets. You've worked your whole life for this." He played on my fear, but he also played on my trust. I come from a generation where you took people at their word. So I followed his instructions. I transferred the money. The whole thing. The number on the screen was so big, it didn't even feel real. As soon as the final transfer went through, he said, "Everything is secure now, Eleanor. You did the right thing." He told me a confirmation packet would be in the mail. And then he hung up. The silence that followed was deafening. A cold dread, a feeling I had never known, started to creep up my spine. It was a gnawing suspicion that I had just made a terrible, irreversible mistake. The next morning, I called my bank, the real one. The woman on the other end was kind, but her words were final. There was no fraud department call. There was no special account. The man didn't exist. The money was gone. I spent the first few months in that apartment walking around in a fog of grief. Waking up was the worst part. That split second of peace before I remembered where I was. But then, slowly, something started to change. It started with small things. One morning, it dawned on me. I didn't have to worry about leaves clogging the gutters. There was no lawn to mow, no huge garden demanding my attention, no rooms full of things that needed dusting or polishing. My days, which had once been filled with obligations to my stuff, were suddenly open. One afternoon, a shaft of sunlight streamed through my one window and hit the bare wall. In my old house, that light would have been blocked by a bookshelf or a heavy curtain. But here, it was just pure, unobstructed light. I sat there, just watching that patch of sun, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt a flicker of lightness, and that's when I got it. For decades, I hadn't owned my possessions. They had owned me. They owned my time, my energy, my identity. The crushing weight I'd been feeling wasn't just the loss of the money. The scam, as brutal as it was, hadn't just taken my savings. It had taken my chains. It forced me into a minimalist life I never would have chosen, but it was showing me a profound sense of freedom. My life wasn't empty. It was clear. With this clarity, I started building a new life, not based on what I had, but on who I was becoming. With no big house to take care of, I had time. I started taking long walks in the park across the street. I found a little library branch I never knew existed, and started devouring a book a week, a passion I'd let slide for years. I reconnected with my children and grandchildren, not as the grand matriarch in her mansion, but just as their mum and grandma. Our conversations changed. Without the distraction of a big meal to cook or a house to manage, we just talked. Really talked. They told me about their dreams and their struggles. For the first time, they were seeing me, not my home. And I realized that connection was worth more than any heirloom I could have ever passed down. I started volunteering at a local school, reading to first graders twice a week. Seeing their faces light up filled a part of my heart I didn't even know was empty. I made friends in my new apartment building. Other folks living simple lives, rich in stories instead of things. We'd sit outside on warm evenings and just share our days. This community, these simple joys, this sense of purpose, this was a richness my bank account could never hold. The man on the phone took my money, but he gave me something priceless in return. He gave me a second chance at life, a chance to rediscover what actually matters. The greatest lesson I learned is this: your worth isn't in what you own or what you've built. Your true wealth is in your time, your relationships, your peace of mind, and the love you give and get back. Possessions can vanish in a heartbeat, but that inner richness, no one can ever take that away from you. Losing everything forced me to see the abundance that was there all along. The freedom from trying to keep up, the simple joy of a walk in the park, the deep connection with the people I love. That's a fortune that never loses its value. I'm sharing my story not for pity, but for perspective. I'm not asking you to like or subscribe. I'm asking you to just take a moment. Look at your own life and ask yourself, what owns you? In the comments below, I'd love for you to share just one thing in your life that you value more than money. Let's remind each other what real wealth looks like.